Schmitt tonight. A lot of lessons to learn from Tuesday night's primaries. The first, even after January 6th and a nonstop onslaught of negative media coverage and constant claims like all of these that Trump is severely damaged, all of that media coverage we've seen for months now. Tonight it is clear that Donald Trump is still the premier dominating force in American conservative politics, and it's not even close. Trump on Truth Social this morning, a little bragging, ran the entire board. In Arizona, Missouri, Michigan, some very important primary races that were won by Trump's favor. And some Trump enemies watched their political careers go down in flames last night. In Michigan, Peter Meijer, one of the 10 who voted to impeach Trump after January 6th, is looking for a new job this morning. With Trump's blessing, John Gibbs stealing his Republican nomination for re-election. Gibbs joins us here in just a few minutes on that. In Arizona, a state mired in controversy after the 2020 election, Speaker of the House Rusty Bowers lost his bid for a state Senate seat after testifying in front of the January 6th committee, which of course was completely one-sided and very, very painfully political, and making comments like this about Donald Trump on national TV.
He has no idea what a hard life is and what people have to go through in the real world. He has no idea what courage is.
Well, Bowers got eviscerated by almost 30 points last night, a comical shellacking by former state Senator David Farnsworth, who was, of course, backed by Trump. And those numbers are flipped, by the way. And maybe the funniest part of what we saw last night is that Democrats helped Trump run the board. It's been reported that arrogant Democrats are helping Trump in the process, funding his favorite candidates, assuming they'll be easier to beat in November. Kind of reminds you of 2016 when Trump's primary victory put Hillary on cruise control, polls indicating it was a slam dunk for the first female president. This could totally backfire in November. And in a less dramatic way, it's already happening, as there's been a lot of Democrat fury from the donors, rage after hearing that their money is being used to fund Trump candidates. Imagine the anger they're going to feel in November if some of those candidates actually win. People who are so politically engaged they spend their own money donating to politicians, finding out their money was used to catapult Trump Republicans to victory. It is going to be hilarious when it happens. And then there's the even more beautifully insulting part of this scheme, maybe the greatest political bait and switch of all time. Democrats giving new definition to the phrase useful idiot, which we use a lot on this show because there's so many of them in Washington. Now follow me here. Imagine being Rusty Bowers or Peter Meijer. You go along with the Democrat narrative. You go against 90% of the Republican Party. You claim January 6th was actually an insurrection. You side with Democrats who ran a Soviet-style one-sided publicity trial for political purposes. You even maybe speak to the kangaroo court J6 committee, just like Rusty Bowers did. Take a listen.
I may, in the eyes of men, not hold correct opinions or act according to their vision or convictions. But I do not take this current situation in a light manner, a fearful manner, or a vengeful manner. I do not want to be a winner by cheating.
So you do all that, and you are a hero to Democrats for about 45 minutes. And then they immediately reward you by stabbing you right in the back. And as they did in Peter Meijer's case, after he went along with their narrative, they funded his primary opponent. They kicked him right out of the job. It is a lesson learned for very weak Republicans out there. The other side does not care how much you capitulate to them. They will rip out your spine and beat you to death with it if you let them. You begin to wonder if they're funding Liz Cheney's Republican opponent in Wyoming, perhaps. Maybe not yet. She's still useful to their cause for a couple more months, and frankly, Harriet Hageman in Wyoming is not going to need much help beating her in about 2 weeks. All right, John Gibbs joins us now after winning his primary last night in Michigan, taking down incumbent anti-Trump Congressman Peter Meijer. And it's good to have you on, sir. My first question to you is this. What is it like winning a Republican primary with the help of Democrats who think you are going to be easier to beat in November? What is that like?
Well, I would say I'm not convinced that what the Democrats did actually helped me at all. Okay. We have polls going back as far as February showing that I'm ahead, but I was ahead by quite a bit. So I think that we had this quite a while ago, and it only got better since then. As we got out in the district, we visited every single city and township in the district. We met lots of voters, we got lots of yard signs out, got the name out there.
Yeah.
So I'm not convinced that what they did made a difference or not. I think it's quite comical that they believe I would be easier to beat, which is totally false.
Right.
I think we're going to whomp them pretty good. I think a lot of the independent voters who might have gone Biden in 2020, just like putting your hand on a stove, they're going to realize that high gas prices, inflation, total disaster in Ukraine and Afghanistan were not good. They're going to come back home. So I think we're going to really have a good chance at beating them as long as we work hard here. So I'm not convinced that their spending made a difference.
Yeah, fair enough. Is it something to watch? I mean, they have these Republicans, right, that went along with the J6 narrative that, that have capitulated to them so much. To watch Democrats immediately sell them out in this fashion tells you everything you need to know about politics, doesn't it?
That's a very good point. I mean, it's amazing. Like when you make a decision to go along with the Democrats and play along with this whole January 6th, quote unquote, insurrection narrative that they're doing and think that they're somehow going to reward you. That's not the case.
Yeah.
You know, our party has a very broad tent. We have social liberal, social conservative, libertarians, et cetera, et cetera. The Democrat Party tends to be more lockstep, and they don't really tolerate dissent as much. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, they're never going to reward any Republican, even if that Republican capitulates to their agenda. So most of us know that, most regular folks, but apparently it's been a hard lesson learned for some that unfortunately thought they would reciprocate what they did.
Yeah, John Gibbs with a great fight last night. We appreciate you coming on. We're going to follow you. Thank you, sir.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, Dick Morris joins us now to dig more back into this, author of Return, Trump's Big 2024 Comeback. Dick, good to see you. What did you make of last night? Just your top line thoughts.
Well, Donald Trump in 2016 took over the Republican Party. Now he's making it over. He's recreating it in his image as a MAGA party, as something dedicated to America first. And as I say in my book, The Return, this is an act of total alchemy to change the Republican Party from essentially a globalist institution that goes along with the Europeans, that buys into the global narrative of free flow of goods and free flow of labor, to one that stops immigration, illegal immigration, to one that stops unfair trade practices, that puts America first. It's a total change in the concept of the Republican Party.
Right.
Goes back to Adam Smith's free flow of goods and labor. Well, that's fine until you lose your job or until your factory closes down. And Donald Trump realizes that and speaks for those people. And as I say in The Return, my new book, that's going to propel him back to office in 2024.
You know, the left right now still says they see evidence. They claim they see evidence that Trump is bruised by January 6th. And all of the coverage and all of the constant negative headlines, the investigations. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's bruised, all right. He's 5 points ahead of Biden nationally. He swept the primaries in Arizona and Michigan, 2 of the 5 key states he's got to win. Our polls show him double digits lead in each of the 4 early primary states. He's not bruised. And the Democrats' strategy is to divide the Republican Party, divide and conquer. And they're trying to gin up a primary against Donald Trump to stop him from winning. And the point I make in my book is that they remember that Ted Kennedy killed Jimmy Carter by opposing him in the primary in 1980, that opened the door for Ronald Reagan to win with a split Democratic Party. That's the game they're playing now.
And finally, just the idea that, I mean, it's so interesting to watch how they're funding, they're taking Democrat donor money and they're funding the candidates that they despise the most. That's incredible to me.
The key thing is that they've understood that they can only beat the Republicans by corrupting their nominating process, whether it's by donating to people or the way Fox News and other organs glorify DeSantis and glorify Mike Pence. And they don't cover Trump's speech, but they cover Pence's speech, full of platitudes, because they understand that it's only by intervening in the nominating process that they win. Shoot the planes while they're on the ground, because once they're up in the air, they'll kill you.
Dick Morris, always good to see you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson. With inflation at its highest level in 40 years and interest rates skyrocketing, your retirement plans are in danger. Well, our friends at American Hartford Gold can help show you how to protect your savings and retirement accounts by diversifying your portfolio with physical gold and silver. Yeah. If you call them right now, they have a special offer. They will give you a free gold coin on your first qualifying order. So don't wait. Call now. Here's the number. 866-935-4309. That's 866-935-4309 or text Newsmax to 65532. That's Newsmax to 65532. Thank you.